I've been through a lot, but this is a bit much. I never envisioned this day would come. I thank all of my family. I thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
In the late hours of July 12, 2023, two women would be shot dead protecting each other and would later be buried next to each other. At around 5:06 p.m., both best friends had driven to a familiar spot to relax after the close of work. But what they didn't know was that was the last day they would be alive. Just a few minutes later, Waukegan police would receive a desperate 911 call at the 400 block of Washington Street in Waukegan near Keller Avenue about a shooting. When they arrived, the scene was nothing they had expected. Inside a vehicle were the lifeless bodies of two women who had been shot multiple times. As investigators searched for answers, a horrifying truth emerged. The killer wasn't a stranger. It was someone both women knew was dangerous and had stayed away from. Sadly, this time, they would be caught unawares. In fact, cases like this echo many of the stories we've covered before. Different names, different details, but the same heartbreaking themes. Like the case of a father of three, whose wife plotted his murder in cold blood for his life insurance policy. If you have not watched this, I will leave the link at the end of this video. Now let's look at the life and death of Serenity Childs and her best friend, Brianna Sinai Hall.
Everybody loved Serenity. She was just, an amazing young girl or young lady.
19-year-old Serenity Desired Childs was born on June 19, 2004, to Marla D. Jeffries and Taurus Childs Sr. She grew up in North Chicago, Illinois, surrounded by a supportive family, and quickly became known for her gentle spirit and caring nature. She had a warmth and presence that could brighten the lives of everyone around her. Serenity graduated from George Nelson Tremper High School in Kenosha, Wisconsin in June 2022. Being one of 5 siblings, Serenity was more than just a daughter, sister, or friend. She was the heart of her family. To those who knew her best, she wasn't simply present in their lives. She left an imprint. People often said she had the rare ability to walk into a room and instantly shift the mood with her smile or her playful sense of humor. But Serenity's passions ran deep. She loved music, dance, and rap, often posting short videos of herself performing online. She wasn't shy about chasing her dreams, and many believed she had the talent to go far in the entertainment world. She dreamed of becoming a professional artist, not just for the fame, but to inspire others with her words and creativity. Yet, as she pursued her dreams, she chased something else. Serenity had a practical and giving side. She worked as a certified nursing assistant, CNA, spending her days caring for people in need, a certification she acquired while she was attending high school. Her family said it was no surprise she chose that path. She had always been nurturing, the kind of person who would give her last dollar to help a friend or sit up late comforting someone who was hurting. One of those goals was to become a registered nurse, determined not to let anything interfere with her goals and dreams she had envisioned for herself. She was enrolled at the College of Lake County to pursue those dreams. But as much as Serenity lived to give, she also surrounded herself with people who inspired her in return, and one of them would sadly be buried alongside her. Her best friend, 18-year-old Brianna Sinai Hall. Brianna was born in 2005 and from Waukegan, Illinois. She had her own spark, a unique blend of creativity and adventure. She had a gift for fashion and design, often filling notebooks with clothing sketches, mixing colors, and envisioning runway looks she hoped to one day bring to life. She talked often about opening her own fashion line, a dream her friends wholeheartedly believed she could achieve. Sadly, she would never live long enough to fulfill that dream. But in the time she had, Brianna's spirit left a lasting mark. Brianna's personality was bold, yet kind. She was adventurous, always suggesting spontaneous trips or outings, and generous in ways that made people feel seen and valued. Her love of travel was no secret. She dreamed of seeing the world, and one of her biggest goals was visiting Paris, a city she and Serenity often fantasized about. They planned to go together, already picturing themselves walking under the Eiffel Tower, laughing and creating memories. The bond between Serenity and Sinai was something rare. They weren't just friends, they were chosen sisters. They called each other Twin, a nickname that perfectly described their closeness. They celebrated birthdays together, supported each other's creative passions, and leaned on one another through the ups and downs of young adulthood. To outsiders, their friendship looked unbreakable, almost as though they were two halves of the same soul. For their families, Serenity and Brianna represented hope, potential, and love. They were young women on the brink of bright futures, one dreaming of music, the other of fashion. Together, they made plans for tomorrow without realizing that tomorrow was not guaranteed. On Wednesday, July 12, 2023, Serenity and Brianna decided to meet up after work, something that had become a comforting routine for the pair. That evening, they drove to the 400 block of Washington Street in Waukegan near Keller Avenue and parked in a lot behind a building near Keller Avenue. This was a familiar spot where they often gathered with friends to laugh, talk, and relax after long days. But soon, what should have been a normal evening between best friends spiraled into a nightmare. At around 5:06 p.m., someone would approach their car. It was 18-year-old Jonathan Stinnett, Serenity's ex-boyfriend from Winthrop Harbor. Their relationship had been rocky and dangerous, defined by jealousy, manipulation, and abuse. Serenity, realizing the threat he posed, had taken the brave step of securing a restraining order against him just weeks earlier. The court order legally barred Jonathan from contacting or approaching her, but he chose to ignore it. But that day he wouldn't come empty-handed. Jonathan came armed with a 9mm semi-automatic gun. The danger Serenity feared was about to become terrifyingly real. Without a word of warning, he raised the weapon and began firing into the parked vehicle. Neighbors and passers-by recalled hearing a terrifying burst of gunfire that shattered the calm of the summer evening. Serenity and Brianna were struck multiple times, wounds that would prove fatal. The attack was merciless. Jonathan didn't just fire once. He emptied enough rounds into the car to ensure neither girl could survive. But this wasn't the end. As their bodies remained slumped in the vehicle, Jonathan ran from the scene. Police would later confirm that this escape was not a panicked reaction, but part of a calculated attempt to flee responsibility for the crime. It didn't take long for the police to be called. Multiple calls poured into 911, reporting a shooting. Waukegan police officers rushed to the scene, only to be met with the devastating reality. 2 young women inside the car, both unresponsive, both had died on the scene. The Lake County Coroner's Office later confirmed they had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. But what investigators discovered next would make this tragedy even harder to stomach. In detectives immediately locking down the crime scene, taping off the parking lot, and interviewing horrified witnesses, within hours, surveillance footage from nearby businesses and eyewitness accounts pointed to one man, Jonathan Stinnett. The ex-boyfriend Serenity had fought so hard to keep away was now the prime suspect in her murder, and Brianna's. Meanwhile, word of the shooting spread like wildfire across North Chicago and Waukegan. Family and friends of both girls rushed to the scene, only to be met with heartbreaking confirmation. But then the police would discover something darker than anyone realized. As police pieced together the timeline, they found Jonathan wasn't just an angry teenager fueled by jealousy. he was a repeat abuser. Court records revealed prior domestic violence charges, and Serenity had only recently secured a restraining order against him. It should have been her shield, but instead the system failed her. Jonathan ignored the order, and no one stopped him.
And that wasn't the only disturbing revelation. The 9mm semi-automatic he used to end 2 young lives wasn't registered to him. Investigators quickly suspected the weapon was illegally obtained, possibly handed off by someone close to him. Even worse, Jonathan wasn't alone that night. Witnesses reported seeing him flee in a black Nissan driven by a 21-year-old acquaintance from Waukegan. That meant someone else knowingly helped him escape, turning this case from a crime of passion into a broader criminal conspiracy. But as officers scrambled to track him down, one fact became undeniable. Jonathan wasn't just fleeing, he was armed, dangerous, and willing to kill again. And the manhunt to stop him had only just begun. Just when police thought he might have vanished, they received a tip from across state lines. Within hours of the shooting, detectives issued a multi-state BELO, or be on the lookout, for Jonathan Stinnett. Surveillance cameras and license plate readers helped track the black Nissan that had fled the scene. Leads pointed north, and before long, authorities discovered that Jonathan had crossed state lines into Kenosha, Wisconsin. But he won't be on the run for long. On July 13, less than 24 hours after the murders, the Kenosha Police Department, working alongside Waukegan investigators, executed a swift operation. They tracked Jonathan to a residence in Kenosha, where he was hiding with his 21-year-old accomplice. Both were taken into custody without further incident. But the relief of his capture was only the beginning of a much darker picture.
18-year-old Jonathan Stinnett has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder after police say he fatally shot 2 women in Waukegan. The double shooting took place on July 12th in the 400 block of Washington Street. According to police, arriving officers found both women inside a vehicle in the parking lot. The Lake County Coroner's Office has identified the victims as 19-year-old Serenity Childs of North Chicago and 18-year-old Brianna Ware Hall of Waukegan. Stinnett was quickly identified as a suspect, as he reportedly was in a relationship with one of the victims. Read more about Stinnett's apprehension in our WGNTV.com story.
Jonathan was transported to the Kenosha County Jail, awaiting extradition back to Illinois. Prosecutors wasted no time. He was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts for each victim, along with multiple firearm-related offenses. His 21-year-old accomplice faced charges for aiding his escape, highlighting how Jonathan didn't act entirely alone in this horrific crime. But court documents painted a chilling history. Jonathan had already been arrested for abusing Serenity in the past, with records showing multiple police encounters tied to domestic violence. Serenity had shown immense courage when she filed for a restraining order just weeks before her death, a desperate attempt to protect herself. But here's the haunting reality. The very system meant to shield her failed catastrophically. Despite his history, Jonathan was free. Despite a restraining order, he had access to a deadly weapon. And despite every red flag, he was able to hunt down Serenity and Brianna, ending their young lives in cold blood. The case ignited outrage in both Waukegan and North Chicago. Advocates for domestic violence victims pointed to Serenity's story as yet another example of how restraining orders are only as strong as their enforcement. Community members demanded answers. How could an abuser with a documented past still have the means to kill? Why wasn't he behind bars before this tragedy unfolded? News of Serenity and Brianna's death spread rapidly across Lake County, devastating both communities. Hundreds gathered for a candlelight vigil in the very parking lot where the young women were killed. Balloons were released into the sky, music played, and tears flowed freely as friends and family struggled to comprehend the loss. Serenity's mother described her daughter as her angel, a source of joy and strength who had her whole future ahead of her. She spoke of how Serenity always looked out for others and dreamed of making it big in music.
At 10 tonight, we are hearing from the parents of a woman killed in a shooting last night in Waukegan. 19-year-old Serenity Childs of North Chicago was killed along with her friend, 18-year-old Brianna Hall of Waukegan. Serenity's family saying she was a certified nursing assistant and always put other people before herself. Police say the women were found inside a car parked behind a building on Washington near Keller.
Everybody loved Serenity. She was just, an amazing young girl or young lady.
She was just an overall leader, and people gravitated toward her.
Police say they have arrested Jonathan Stinnett on first-degree murder charges. He was allegedly in a relationship with one of the victims.
Brianna's father, equally broken, called her his princess. He remembered her adventurous spirit, her talent for fashion, and her plans to one day see Paris. Friends from North Chicago High School and Waukegan High School shared stories online, posting pictures and videos of the inseparable duo. They were often seen together, laughing, dancing, and dreaming of the future. For their peers, the tragedy was not just shocking, but terrifying. Two young women full of promise, gone in seconds because of an abusive ex who couldn't let go. As Jonathan appeared in court for the first time, prosecutors emphasized the brutality of the crime. They detailed how he ambushed Serenity and Brianna, firing multiple rounds without hesitation. His violation of the restraining order painted a chilling picture of premeditation. The judge ordered Jonathan held without bond. The courtroom was filled with family members, many breaking down in tears as prosecutors described the shooting. Serenity's mother later told reporters that hearing the details in court was like reliving the nightmare, but justice would not come easily, and the battle was far from over. Defense attorneys hinted at possible arguments regarding Jonathan's age, mental state, and background, but prosecutors made it clear they would pursue the maximum penalty for the senseless murders. Meanwhile, both families faced the heartbreaking task of planning funerals for two best friends who had planned to build a future together. In a tragic twist, Serenity and Brianna were laid to rest in a joint funeral service. The girls had once joked about being twins for life, and in a way their bond carried into their final goodbye. They were buried side by side, wearing matching outfits they had designed themselves, holding hands as if still connected in spirit. Mourners described the sight as both heartbreaking and beautiful. Two young women who looked like they were simply asleep, together forever. Serenity had already done what countless survivors of abuse are urged to do. She reached out for help. She had reported Jonathan's violence, and a restraining order was issued. But a piece of paper could not stop a young man determined to harm her. Family members later revealed that Serenity had voiced her fears. She knew Jonathan was dangerous, and she worried he wouldn't respect the court order. Unfortunately, she was right. The Waukegan and North Chicago communities rallied together in grief and anger. Local leaders and advocacy groups pointed out the glaring gaps in the system: restraining orders without enforcement, lack of immediate intervention, and the ease with which abusers could access firearms. As the legal process moves forward, prosecutors emphasized that this was not a crime of passion, it was an execution. Jonathan had stalked, ignored legal boundaries, and carried out his plan with cold intent. Still, Brianna's and Serenity's families knew that no sentence could ever replace what had been taken from them. Serenity and Brianna were more than victims. They were best friends, dreamers, daughters, and inspirations. Their lives were cut short, but their bond will never be broken. May their memory push us towards real change, stronger protections, and a world where no young woman loses her life because someone couldn't accept no. Our deepest condolences to their families, friends, and everyone who knew them. What do you think about it? Let us know what you think in the comments below.
And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.